There we go. Okay, so now that the recording has started, the current executive, the co-chairs are Jocelyn Radcliffe and myself, Rob Samuelak. The policy and political action ENOs are Dominique Bergeron and Olivia Burundia. Finance ENO is Victoria Ralph. Student liaison is Emma Ayukawa. Cane liaison is Hilda Swirsky. The membership ENO is Samson Agbaum. Social media is Cleo Danforth. Communications is Jessica Burforth. And all the people in bold, they're ending their terms. So I would like to thank all the people who are in bold for all the work they've done. And most of them are staying on in different capacities. So I'm even more thankful. Because they play such a vital role in our interest group. Next slide. So we are going to defer the approval of our executive committee minutes from June 5th because we seem to have misplaced the minutes. So we will approve the minutes at a future meeting when we have found the minutes. So at the time being, we're gonna move to approve the AGM minutes from September 2022. Does anybody want to move that motion?
I'll move the motion.
So Dominique moves that motion. Does anybody want to second that?
I'll second it.
Okay, so that is moved. Moving on. So we had a call out for new executive members and we got some great people on board now. So I'm moving into the chair role. Jocelyn is moving into the past chair role, which means we'll be looking for a new chair or co-chair for the coming year, next year. So if anybody has interested in that, now is a good time to start thinking about that. Policy and political action, Dominique and Olivia are staying there. Finance. Victoria, do you have any comments?
I would like to self-nominate me for the finance role.
Okay, I move that to nominate Victoria, so I'll put myself as moving. Does anybody want to second that? Jocelyn is seconding that. Okay, do we need to vote on that by Robert's rules, or are we good to move on?
So.
I think we need
It's
to.
just all approved.
Yeah.
All approved. Does anybody not approve this? All approve. Voice good. Voice your concerns now. Okay, Victoria.
I'm really good at it.
You're amazing and you're going to be with us another 2 years, it seems.
Okay.
Unanimously approved. Thank you. Emma is going to stay on as a student liaison. Lily Liu is coming on as our she's coming on as our cane liaison, and that's great. She's yeah, she's at Seneca College, which means she has a long time to be with us. Membership chair is currently open. Anybody have any interest in that? We would love to have you in that role. Social media, Cleo is staying in that role. Communications, anybody who wants to be a newsletter editor, we would love a newsletter editor. Anybody who wants to be a webmaster, we'd love to have a webmaster. And then we have members at large joining us. We have Brenda Hutton and we have Sarah Thornley. And we have 2 more members at large options if people want to join as a member at large and come join our executive, but don't want a portfolio and don't want the responsibility of a portfolio, but want to jump in and help where they can. Okay, treasurer's report.
Okay, so current bank balance is sitting at $8,588.28. So far this year, on the right-hand side, those are our expenses for the year. So Zoom was $226. We will have to pay that every year. Scholarship, we have a new scholarship that was just given out this year for $1,000. There's a $100 dispensing fee. And we have a commitment of 3 years. So we have another 2 years to go on that. I've already earmarked it in my budget plans there. Social media ads, I have some outstanding ones that it has to be updated. I think we're at like just under $40 for it, so I have to update that. We had some political presence, which was phenomenal, being in person now. Queen's Park and COP27, and then honorariums for coming and speaking at events and giving us some presentations is $154.12. So our total, minus the difference in the social media right now, is $1,865.89. The upcoming expenses, as you'll see later in the slides, we want to get banners for being in that political presence. We can show that we're there, take pictures and whatnot. We've got COP28 in December. I believe that's December. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of these dates. The RNAO Assembly, I think, is next month or November.
No.
And that's in person as well. We're looking at conference attendances to learn more about being like political presence with that stuff. I'm drawing a blank on it. What little notes did I write? Not much. And then again, the 2 more years of scholarships. So we do have membership fees. So if there's any ideas or suggestions any of you guys have in effectively using and spending our money, put them in the chat. I will write as many notes as I need to and look into as many different ways that we can effectively use our money to better our members and our what we advocate for. So by all means, put them in the chat and I'll take a look at them. Is there any questions about the report? Any
So
concerns?
to further with the conference attendances and encouraging political advocacy, if we're kind of exploring the idea of if our we want to empower and educate our executive. So our executive and all our members, so anybody who took the effort to come here tonight, I'm speaking to you. If you want to learn more about planetary health and you want to have a platform to speak about it, and you want to make RNAO and ONEIG part of your platform, and you have a conference that is a reasonable cost, reasonable in quotation marks, maybe not reasonable for you personally, but we do have a little bit of,
Yeah, we've got play money kind of.
we have some play money for that. So if people we want to use it towards that so that we can go and have a political presence and make you part of our political presence. That's where we're thinking of going.
That's all I've got.
Rob, would you like me to cover this one?
Yeah, that'd be great, Jocelyn.
All right, sure. So this is just a snapshot of things we've been up to in the last few months since this is actually since the last Members' Voices report. So it includes the AGM that happened in June, and we just talked a little bit about, which Rob really was supercharged into networking during, which is incredible. Really talk to some of you here right now. And help bring you in. So that it was wonderful. And it led to some other great conversations about environmental issues and just really launched us forward. So that was really well worth our time with ONEIG and the relatively small amount of funding that we put towards it. And we've also been spending the summer in the back end. There's been some projects that are just brewing. We have the of course it's COP28. Right? Am I gonna? Yeah. Okay. COP28 in December. And so there's a lot of little bits back and forth planning, making sure we get the approval and everything sorted out with the details about budgets and things with RNAO. Then we were preparing to preceptor some students with Algonquin College. So we've been working with those students now, which is super exciting, and having a lot of fun. And they're helping us imagine what's next for us. And I think maybe Rob, you'll talk about that. And for the quarterly meeting in June, we really just spent a lot of that going over the RNAO resolutions. And and that worked out pretty well, but we'll get those minutes out as soon as possible. And we have the summer newsletter, if you haven't seen it, that came out that had a lot of great articles in it, including a really detailed account of the AGM from Rob. And we also had this great event with Dr. Melissa Lem that was, oh, I got some on here, that was a partnership event where she talked about being outside in nature and nature prescriptions, and yeah, it was just a really wonderful event that happened midsummer with a really incredible speaker. And we do have a recording of that that's hosted with Beth Emmeth. So lots going on, lots you can catch up on. We've been trying to keep you up to date with emails. And at the AGM as well, we're just so amazed at our group. Like Hilda last year had the Lifetime Achievement Award, and ONEIG is only one little piece of that, but it was so great that in person you got to be honored there and be recognized. And we also had Emma, who wasn't able to make it tonight, who was the student of distinction, and then I was there too and got that award. And thank you, ONEIG, for that nomination. It really meant a lot. So yeah, there's a lot going on. I realized I didn't go into enough detail about our campaign, but that's like a huge thing brewing, and that's part of the students. And I wonder if you just want to do like a couple sentences about that, Rob.
Well, before we get to the campaign, a bunch of us did go to the climate strike on Friday and on Saturday. Not everybody could make it, unfortunately. It was a holiday for some people. But I went to the one in Ottawa, and I got the talk. I talked with John Fraser, who's the Liberal interim leader. I've talked with Jonathan Benoit-Jobin, the Green Party co-leader, a couple other people as well, Jocelyn and Dr. Claudette Holloway and Lamo Dalkar, the president and president-elect of RNAO. They went to the Toronto version. We had Morgan in Whitby come out. So we had a presence, and we had flags flying for RNAO and planetary health. Jocelyn, do you want me to go? How much detail do you want me to talk about with this campaign right now?
Like just like 2 minutes, something like that.
Okay. So what is the biggest environmental problem in healthcare, everybody? Question mark. Put it in the chat.
Waste. It's waste.
Waste. And nurses, we have to deal with this waste, and we have very little control with what we do with the waste that's coming in. So there's a new initiative called sustainable or net zero procurement, where when they're in the procurement phase, which is the upstream phase before it gets to us, not only are they considering price, but the hope is they also consider various environmental criteria. So 80 to 90% weighting on price, and then a 10 to 20% weighting on environmental criteria. We're also looking at doing, as part of that, a carbon labeling on healthcare products. So every healthcare product that's made, hopefully we could put a equivalent of carbon dioxide, how many kilograms is produced in creating that product. And that would help with that sustainable procurement or net zero procurement, because it would give a measurement that could be used as that 10 to 20% for the procurement strategy. So I had a meeting with the nursing officer of Canada, Dr. Lee Chapman, on September 5th, and I met with two people, Jack and Maya, who are the Kane president and president-elect, as well as Dr. Miles Sargent from Canadian Coalition for Green Healthcare. And we met with Dr. Chapman, and we proposed this, and she's going to get us a meeting with the chief medical officer, and we can hopefully get this starting within Health Canada. And hopefully we can get it part of the accreditation process, so that hopefully it would go across the country. As part of that, we need to raise awareness that nurses can do something, and that we have agency, and we have power to make change. So that's where the Algonquin College nursing students come in. We're hoping that they are gonna give us the groundwork for a social media campaign that we can help to engage nurses to feel that agency for change. Jocelyn, did that cover the gist of it to you?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's great overview. Yeah, and there's more to come. I think we're just in those like planning stages and scoping everything out. And so as we get closer to launching a campaign or what's next, we'll try and keep you updated through emails and at our quarterly meetings at minimum. And if you want to help out with that, we would love to. Like if you just want to like to be involved in that work, for example, there's opportunity to do that as well.
Yeah, I know Dominique has been helping with doing a lit review and helping get some stuff for the students. Emma's been helping as well. And there's been a few other people helping in the background as well. So there's things you can do to help participate with this. So if you want something to do, we'll find you something to do. All right, shall we go to the next slide? Comms. Cleo, do you want to take this?
Yeah, sure. So these are just the numbers from 2023 for our social media presence. So on Twitter/X, whatever your choice is, we've got the kind of middle of the road, the impressions and profile visits, and just the numbers in general for Twitter/X are a little bit less reliable, partially due to the fact that impressions mean something different, I think, on Twitter than they do on Facebook and Instagram, due to retweets and stuff like that. Anybody who scrolled past a retweet, I think, technically counts. And also because we aren't really able to compare numbers the same way between year to year, from last year to this year for Twitter, because of the ownership change and the way that their analytics are done has changed quite a bit over the last year. So I wasn't really able to compare numbers. But the data for Facebook and Instagram is quite promising. Our numbers overall for engagement for Facebook are a little bit better, but we've seen way more growth in Instagram this year than in Facebook. So if you can kind of see like an increase of 500% accounts reached in 2023 compared to 2022, an increase of 50% in profile visits, an increase of 2,400% in new followers on Instagram. So right now our audience is still just a little bit bigger on Facebook, but I think Instagram is where more people are going as things kind of truck along and it becomes a social media platform of choice for most people. We only had a few paid ads. Our total ad costs between Instagram and Facebook were $37.72, and no paid ads, or nor do we have like a blue check or anything on Twitter at this time. But yeah, that's about the size of it. It's kind of been slow and steady, but our presence has been growing. And the numbers actually might even be a little bit better in terms of this year, because I was comparing 2023, so January 21st to September 18th or whenever I had done the numbers, to the entire year of 2022. So 2022 even has a little bit of an advantage in the comparison there, and the numbers are still great for 2023.
So thank you, Cleo. Everybody, could you put in the chat what your favorite social media platform is? Just write in the chat, what is your favorite social media platform?
While we're waiting for that too, I just want to like let you know though that we have been told so many times by it's I'm cool, right? I'm cool at ONE-IIOE, the social media like lead there, that they just like love the work that we're doing on social media. So like great job. Everybody is contributing to that. Cleo, I know Dominique, you've done some stuff, Olivia's done some stuff, like and they used our content as examples during training, you know, with the big assembly. Like so I was really proud of that. And
yeah, that's definitely not just me. That's been a lot of help from everybody else, but that's really nice to hear. That's really encouraging.
yeah, they use us as an example regularly, which is really great. One thing I realized, oh, some stuff coming in, too, is that I didn't mention the numbers that we had this year in terms of membership, and I wasn't able to get new numbers. Like they didn't get a response quickly enough from like the most recent numbers, but the last numbers since the last push for membership, we have 172 RNs or NPs, so paid members, and then we have 825 students, and that is just under 1,000 members as of December of 2022. So we'll see that shift with the new membership year, of course, but I just wanted to share those with you. All right, Rob, back to you.
Seems like Instagram is becoming a crowd favorite here. And just to reiterate what Jocelyn said, I asked Anu, who is the social media person for RNAO, and he's like, anything for my favorite interest group. So he loves us. So we're doing great. And Cleo, Dominique, you guys are doing awesome. So shall we go to the next one? Upcoming events. So I'm getting sent to nice Cleo. I'm getting sent to COP. RNAO is funding my whole trip there. And all that work that I did at the AGM, I'm hoping to somehow manage to have the energy to do the same thing the whole week at COP to really boost our presence and boost the voice of nurses on the global stage, and really try to make that like go against all the oil money that's going to compete there. So scholarship. Victoria, this has been your baby. Do you want to talk about the scholarship?
Okay, so Toby Bowers is the one that it was awarded to this year. He's not an ONEIG member. So if you know any ONEIG members that are looking for a scholarship, I believe this one's for a student, please tell them about it. We kind of got a little ghosted. We've reached out and he's probably quite busy. But we have no correspondence with him at this point, and our only request for this was to write an article for our quarterly newsletter. So we are trying to fine tune this so it doesn't happen to us again. We're really excited to share this with him, but it is where it is. So we're just trying to figure out for the next two, like next year's and the year following that, how we can maybe make it a little better for us.
Are
Megan,
master
how are we
students
looking
eligible?
at that? I believe so.
I think the criteria for this was undergrad. I think for this one,
Was it for the BSEN?
I thought it was too.
yeah,
Okay, yeah. Sorry, Megan.
Yeah, because a lot of
but
that,
we could talk about that.
But yeah,
I think it's something worth looking at.
Yeah,
Okay,
maybe we can revisit that before the next cycle happens.
yeah,
maybe we'll make it geared toward that, Megan. Who
yeah.
knows?
Okay, I talked about the sustainable net zero procurement campaign. The chief medical officer of health meeting is not scheduled yet, but it's in the works. CNO meeting happened, preceptorship. So fourth year BSN students at Algonquin College, they do a community clinical placement, and their community clinical placement is doing a project at something in the community. And I am friends with the head of the nursing program there, and she was really excited. She had a Greening the Lab campaign, and her husband ran for the Green Party one time against Polyev. So, because they're in the same riding, I think Polyev won. But, yeah, so she's really gung ho about it, and we got some great students on board, and Jocelyn and I are doing it together. But I work most Tuesdays, unfortunately, so Jocelyn is the interactive face, and I'm the email face of it. There's also a nursing student interest group, collaborative event, workshop to be planned in the future. I met Judy, who is the student membership promoter person for RNAO, and she was really gung-ho and pushing for this. So we're looking at that in the future. Yeah. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. Jocelyn, do you want to talk about this or shall I?
Well, I think everyone had an email sent in when you registered for this meeting, where well, actually, you probably saw a couple because we had a survey actually to see what people thought about a name change for ONEIG. And this was this proposed, or this name change that's here in front of you to ONE-IIOE is the one that most people preferred, although we did have a really small turnout in that survey. I think it was 13 or 14 respondents. But what we're doing now is we're asking you as attendees, as long as you're a member of ONEIG, then you can have like a formal vote, but we of course value your opinion if you have any thoughts on this. We are going to bring this to you, and if we have someone put forward a motion and a seconder, then and everyone and all approves this, then we're going to switch the name to be Ontario Nurses for the Environment One without the interest group, and we'll also have a French name, Infirmières l'Ontario pour l'environnement. I'm going to have to work on that pronunciation. But one of the big reasons why we want to make sure we talk about this now is because we really do want to get that banner printed so everyone can see who we are when we attend community events and public events. Yeah, and
Before we go
any
for a motion,
discussion?
let's do a discussion. Yeah. Any comments? Any questions? Oh, Dominique loves it. We'll be one.
The good
I think
thing
it's
also is
memorable.
that we're including a French name, which we haven't done before, and it is the way we're going to include the French.
And I think it'll also give us a better presence when we're doing advocacy work, not just provincially, but also on a more local, representing Ontario nurses, but nationally. So it gives us that presence as well.
Yeah, I think it's memorable. I think ONEIG is obviously not super clear in what we are unless you know the full acronym, but ONE, One Ontario Nurses for the Environment, like it's very straightforward and very memorable, and I think it'll make us stick in people's minds.
And this is fine with our NEO, I presume?
Black Nurses Interest Group, they changed it, and it's within the, as far as we can tell, it's within the power of our membership to do this.
If we do run up into obstacles, this is to get your, like, the member approval, and then we'll bring that to RNAO and navigate what comes from that step. But we wanted to make sure we had your support to do that before we went ahead.
Once we get the name changed, then it does go to the board and they approve it. But the Faith group did want their name changed. It was being changed throughout the communities. And so it did go to the board and the board did approve it. Usually there has to be a pretty good reason why the board would not approve it. But it is the membership that really dictates what kind of name they want for their group. And it's not going against anything. Like if you wanted something, you know, an oil company name, like this is within the RNAO guidelines.
Would anybody like to put forward a motion to change the name?
I put forward the motion to change our name from ONEIG to the Ontario Nurses for the Environment. One.
Thank you, Hilda. So Hilda set the motion. Who would like to second that motion?
I will second the motion.
So Victoria is seconding that motion. Is there anybody? Well, we can either just say everybody, actually put a thumbs up. Everybody put a thumbs up if you approve of this change. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Anyone who's not a member, we understand you won't be voting.
Okay, 7.
I just can't figure out how to put a thumb up.
Okay, so
Oh, Nancy. So Nancy,
Yeah.
you do want to put a thumb up though,
I
right?
want to put a thumb up, but I
Okay.
have no idea how to do that.
Does
That's
anybody
okay.
want to put
So
a,
count me in.
Thanks, Nancy.
is anybody against it or is it unanimous? I don't see anybody voting against it. Going once, going twice. Okay, let's say the motion's approved. It's moved. Okay, so we're gonna put that name to the RNAO board now. Woohoo! Okay. Let's move to the next piece of business. Jocelyn, do you
We
want to say?
have, yeah, we have not set this meeting yet. We typically do have it in early December. So just watch for update on that. We're just going to be coordinating with our new executive to find a good date and time. But yeah, if we'll let you know. I guess we'll send the email out as soon as we know when the next meeting will be. We always have the quarterly meetings, December, March, June, and then the AGM in September. Just so you know if you're planning on coming to all the next ones, which I hope you are. That's it for now.
Okay. What's next? Oh, we're
So
gonna
we're
go for a
early.
break. So what time is it? So we don't have our speaker coming until 8 o'clock. So before we do a break, why don't we just have a little 5-minute, 10-minute discussion and just say something about yourself, and we can just have a little bit of conversation, and then we'll go for a 5-minute break after that, or however long break we're gonna do.
We had 15 minutes, so we have a little bit of time to coordinate with Barbara. So we'll start the official presentation at 8:15. So we've got lots of time. Yeah.
So this is our time when we go to the back of the room and we have a glass of water and we chat at the back.
Yeah, water cooler, right? Do you want to start, Rob? Tell us about yourself and what you're passionate about.
Well, I currently work in the community. I work for Care for Community and Health Services, and I go to people's homes doing community care, and I do that part-time. And then I also teach first aid. And today I was teaching a French course at a retirement home in Hawkesbury. And then I have 2 young kids, and I do some ski coaching with them, cross-country ski coaching, and some beaver leading, and we do lots of biking and skiing and canoeing. That's a little bit about me.
Awesome. So I'll jump in, and if you want to join next, just like maybe put your hand up, or even just say in the chat, or just in a second like unmute yourself and we can go. Like Rob, I'm like Rob did, I don't know if Rob mentioned this, but he bikes a lot. I bike a lot. I love bike commuting, and I actually finished this little triathlon recently. It was like a mini tri, which I was super stoked about, and I finished it, and I was like in the middle of the group, which felt amazing. So I like doing sports. I like doing soccer. That's like my main sport. So a lot of what I do otherwise is like training for soccer. And I love it. It gets out my fierce energy that I need to get out sometimes. And in my day-to-day work, I am a PhD student at the University of Waterloo, and I'm really happy I get to work in ecological determinants of health. And I'm proposing officially a project right now that's focused in on kind of the intersection between well-being and biodiversity and food systems. So like food security and food sovereignty. So that's my day to day. I got 2 little beans. One's not so little in high school, and the other one is in grade 5. And yeah, just that's probably enough about me. But I'm hoping, Hilda, what's going on with you?
So I was working for 50 years mostly in high-risk obstetrics, which was quite challenging because we were a tertiary center for all of Ontario. And so we get very unusual cases. It always was interesting. Since I am not working, being paid in a job, I'm busier than ever. Like I was saying today, wow, I need a little more time in my day. And so because the environment can be all encompassing, as you can all find things to do and enjoy as part of the environment. So Rob, during the AGM was what networking, and I also got to meet some people with the best practice guidelines, and we have mentioned to Doris and the whole team that we want to have environmental lens in the best practice guidelines. So right now we are looking at digital health. And so there is lots and lots of wonderful things to put about the environment in that. And today, in preparing to introduce Barb Sattler, who is coming, I looked at the book she co-authored, and it's 407 pages, all of environmental knowledge. So compared to nothing when we started 15 years ago, what an amazing leap in the environment, and every topic is in that book. So it's just amazing. I was just flipping quickly through the pages to see if I could use anything when I'm analyzing the BPG that we are developing. And so we are going to start having an environmental lens included in the BPGs, because they are going to look at client focus, patient-centered care, or whatever. And there was lots of things I saw that were environmental focus on client-centered care. So I am sure that we will be able to use some of that knowledge. So it's so exciting. Things just get more and more exciting all the time.
Just to go
Thanks so
off
much,
of what
Hilda.
just to go off what Hilda said, with that climate lens for the BPG program, if you're interested in being one of the contributors
Right.
to that, talk to us and we'll get you in with that. And you can have your say with the BPGs, and you can, push for that climate lens on our best practices, because between what comes in from our supplies and our equipment to how we use our supplies and our equipment, that's what our impact is as nurses. So this is how we can have an impact in our nursing practice and make that impact global, because those BPGs, they are gold standard for nursing practice. Megan,
And giving you the heads up also, the Earth Day Worldwide Committee that I sit on, they have already chosen the topic for 2024, and it's going to be the earth versus plastic, the planet versus plastic. So this is such a wonderful opportunity. It doesn't matter who you are, you're going to be able to do something about decreasing some kind of plastic. Even my husband was getting excited. He could do something for this. And an Earth Day committee, because it's such a wonderful topic, they've already started to advertise, so you don't have to wait to 2024. They've also started to roll things out. So this will fit in with Rob's decreasing procurement also. I can just see it.
That's amazing. Talk about bringing us up, Hilda. I feel like I'm a duck, inflating even further with all the things you're talking about. Megan, I want to hear from you.
Hi, yeah. So my name's Megan. I live in Hamilton. I work in primary care. I'm a big bike commuter, but that's kind of the extent of my cycling. I do run a lot. I ran a 50K ultramarathon last year, and I'm hoping to do another one next year. So yeah, it's a bit crazy, but it's fun. And then I did Chase the Coyote, which is outside of Orangeville, which no longer exists, unfortunately. And then a bit more about my work. So thankfully, in the Hamilton Family Health Team, we do have a green initiative that's being rolled out kind of across the FIT, as we call it. So it's been really interesting to be a part of that. And then one thing that I have been trying to do with a couple other nurses is to start a nursing community of practice, kind of within the Green Initiative, because in primary care, nurses aren't really connected. We don't often get a chance to talk to one another or come together. So that's something we're trying to do to kind of bring these changes across the sites and see what nurses at other sites are interested in doing. So very excited about that. But yes, everybody's very busy, so it's always hard with things like this.
Thanks so much, Megan. That's so exciting. 50K, and also your green team stuff. We'll have to connect on that. Kristen, I'd love to hear from you.
Hi, everybody. Kristen from Toronto. My mind's still blown from 50K. That's really awesome. I just love hearing about all the work everybody's doing with this program. Thank you. So I'm an emerge nurse for the majority of my practice downtown Toronto. And my passions in life have always been in nature. I love hiking and backcountry, lots of paddleboarding lately and running. Also recently starting to do volunteer work with Toronto Wildlife Center. Just, it's a huge passion. I want to merge the two. That's where I'm at. So I'm here to learn about how I can get involved and contribute that way. So thanks again, guys.
That's incredible. I think we share that. You share that like love of nature with a lot of us. Yeah, absolutely. Would anyone else like to share a little bit about themselves? Or just some thoughts even? Maybe everyone needs a little bit of, oh.
I can say something.
Oh, great. Hi, Brenda.
Well, I retired, but I'm still active in RNAO. I have 2 children and 5 grandchildren. I watch the littlest one several days a week. And I'm in the evenings, I do volunteer works, such as at a music venue. It's a not-for-profit charitable, and it also has a music school for underprivileged children, and also a community theater. And I'm involved with something called Society of Learning in Retirement, where we all we do courses, but it's sort of peer. We all participate, so there's not a teacher. So anyway, lots of interesting things. I'm in a choir and anyway, so not so much, I guess, with environmental things, but anyway, I am very conscious of and live simply and walk a lot and that sort of thing. Try not to use plastics or buy a lot of consumer goods, that sort of thing.
There's no guilt, Brenda. It's okay. You're here. You're joining in. That's great.
I also think well, it's true that being anchored in your community and being connected to your neighbors and community is like one of the best things you can do to build resilience.
Yeah.
And in terms of adapting to everything, right? Like who do you go to when there's a storm and you need some help? You know, it's your neighbors and your friends nearby. So anyway, it's just a little connection there. I love singing too, by the way. Today there was a group sing along at this social justice event, and I was there by myself, but I really just belted it out. It's like one of my favorite things to do. Is there anybody else want to share a little bit about themselves?
It's Nancy. I don't necessarily want to share anything about myself, just to say I stopped working for pay, and so I don't actually call myself retired unless I can get a deal for something where you get, things are less expensive if you're over 65 and whatever. So I just actually usually just put myself down as unwaged, because I am an adjunct professor at University of Ottawa and do a lot of stuff. I'm just going back to the idea of the best practice guideline and think that it's way more than the stuff that we use and the way that we practice. There's the whole mental health part of that really needs to shine through as well. And that, people who are involved have emotional responses to that. Carmen Hust and I are going to be writing about this next year. We have to wait till next year, but we have been doing some work on this, some presentations and whatever. In fact, we've done presentations on this. Gee, Hilda, do you remember when we first met in 2003? And we were doing a presentation on tidal, but I also did one on the environment at that time, on the environment in nursing, mostly looking at the built environment and what we could do about things like that. Anyway, I'm just a little concerned about the BPG being sure to be inclusive of all of the facets that are affected around the environment. That's all. I just wanted to say that.
Well, I'm glad
And
that
I'd be,
I'm glad you're concerned about the BPGs, because we need to start having that climate lens with our practice guidelines. And it needs to be expansive. It needs to comprehensive as well, from all facets of nursing. Which
yes,
is
I'm actually gerontology and psych and mental health.
okay.
So possibly that mental health, that could be why actually, when I think of it, that could be why that's one of my big concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like the challenges that our patient populations are going to be facing, right? And I think that's
Yes.
you hit on a huge one. And like how to prepare the system, like what kind of system needs will we need as we go forward into the future with what we're expecting, and so many different elements, right? Not just that mitigation piece, which is our responsibility. Yeah, absolutely. Good
And
points.
Carmen Hust is the person that I was talking about.
Yes, I know.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
she's amazing.
Yes, she is.
And Nancy, since we met, I also have an architect that I met who was a phenomenal architect who was interested in the environment and all her architectural work she's doing. So we do work together with some of the things that are being constructed now to make sure that we do not forget about the environment.
Oh, yes. Well, in fact, a number of the hospitals get the, what is it, lead or LEED or whatever, some
LEED, yes,
designation
yes.
as being environmentally friendly.
Right.
So we should be pushing for that. I just wonder, too, about all these new places that are being built and how, like we have in Ottawa there, we're going to get a new hospital, and Montreal actually just in the last 10 years have consolidated and have a brand new campus. And I just wonder about in the new buildings and whatever, how concerned or how much they are looking at environmental possibilities for, like for using solar panels and things like that in the design of the projects. There should be somewhere where we could recommend that they insist on that. Anyway, just my thoughts, that's all.
Hospitals are huge with flat roofs. I think they're a great candidate for solar. I think that's a really good idea.
And
Yeah, those are
Barbara,
great
Great
ideas.
ideas. The problem is to get them implemented.
and it is a struggle to get people interested. It is a struggle. People that are creating things who want to make lots of money,
Yeah, for sure.
developers. And Barbara's here now, and we're going to take a break before she starts.
That's right. So yeah, feel free to
Yes.
get up and stretch. We'll start at 8:15. And yeah, well, we'll go from that point. So stretch, take a little walk, and yeah, I'll meet you all back here soon. And we're probably just going to sort out a few technical pieces. Hilda, I'm going to step away just for a minute or two.
Okay. Hi, Barb. It's so nice to have you here. It really
Yeah,
is.
I'm delighted. And I'm going to use 10 minutes to go outside too, because I've been sitting at my desk all day long. So I'll be back
Perfect.
in 10 minutes.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we're starting in 10 minutes, okay?
Sure, be
Great.
back in 10.
Thank you.
And I'm stretching my legs. It is great to see you, Barb.
Yeah, it is nice to be here and nice to see you again.
It's been a while.
And you're still fighting the good fight, as it were. Yeah, always too much to do for us to retire, right?
Yes, retire. I was thinking today, there just isn't enough time in the day to do what we want to do, like especially the environment. I mean, you can just go off any way you want.
I often do.
As I see from the bio, that just a short snippet of your accomplishment.
Oh, I don't know. It's just, I've lived a lot of years. So you live a lot of years, you eventually get a bunch of stuff done. It's the way it works. So
right, and things, what comes around goes around in a way too. So
yeah, I have a lot of young nurses now, particularly out here in California, who we're mentoring and getting ready to pass the baton to, and feeling, terrible about what we're handing them, certainly, but excited that they're happy to be taking it. That was my 10 minutes.
Barb, who at Annie is going to Dubai?
I'm assuming Katie will be, but I'm not on the board anymore, so I'm not sure who's going to be going.
I'll introduce you to
maybe
Katie
Kara Cook.
Oh yeah, Kara Cook.
And well, she's got a new little one, but Katie usually goes to the COPs. So
I'm going to be going this year.
So well, you should definitely, if you email Katie, if she's not going, she will totally know who's going. And you have Katie, she's Katie at
Oh, Hilda, you have her contact stuff?
Yes, I will introduce you.
Amazing, thank you.
Tonight. So give her a little bit of background about you also. Are we ready to start, Rob?
What time is it? Oh, it's 8:15. Let's get going.
Okay. Or
short bio, because I have a lot of slides.
It's about 3 pages long.
No, bio very short.
It is my honor to introduce you to our keynote speaker, internationally recognized registered nurse of distinction, a leader in environmental health and nursing with numerous environmental accomplishments. Dr. Barbara Sattler, who currently is a professor at the University of San Francisco, is a registered nurse with an MPH and PhD obtained from the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. She is also a fellow in the American Academy of Nursing. Prior to her current position, Barbara worked at the University of Maryland, where she directed the Environmental Health Education Center that included the first graduate program in environmental health for nurses in the country. She directed the Maryland Hospitals for Healthy Environments, a 10-year statewide initiative that helped hospitals develop sustainable policies and practices to achieve the triple bottom line of employee health, patient health, and ecological health. Supported by grants from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, she also helped to bring local sustainable, healthy foods to Maryland hospitals. Barbara has worked at the local level to communities facing environmental health risks associated with lead-based paint, pesticides, Superfund sites, and risks associated with gas and oil extraction, including fracking. She has been an advisor on state and national advisory bodies, including the Institute of Medicine and the U.S. EPA's Office of Child Health Protection and the National Library of Medicine for informational needs of health professionals on environmental health, contributing to integrating environmental health into nursing, education practice, research, and policy advocacy. Dr. Sattler has been the recipient of numerous grants including from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, as well as grants from a host of private foundations. In addition to being the
Oh,
author,
Hilda, you need to stop.
in addition to being the recipient of numerous in addition to being the author of written and digital publications, articles, chapters, and textbooks, and the book Environmental Health and Nursing, Barbara is a founding member of the Alliance of Nurses for Healthy Environments, a national network of nurses working on environmental health issues. Barbara currently serves on several nonprofit boards.
I'm
and on the
serious,
Science
Hilda.
Advisory
You're
Board.
taking up good space here for my presentation. They don't
Please-
care about that.
Please join me in welcoming Dr. Barbara Sattler.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Hilda said, do you want to introduce yourself or do you want me to introduce you? And I said, oh, go ahead and introduce me. Clearly, I should have introduced myself. It would have taken 2 seconds. Is it okay if I just go ahead now?
Go ahead, go ahead.
Good, thank you. I really appreciate that, Hilda. It was just too much of a good thing, I think. And so do you all see climate change, fire, smoke, and health?
Yeah.
Yeah, so when Hilda invited me and we talked about climate change, but I know what's going on in Canada and how you're sharing the wealth because we've been getting a lot of your smoke down here. And I think that given that you are an environmental health group, I'm going to kind of whiz by some of the basic climate health stuff and really drill down into fire and smoke and health, because I do think that's something we've learned a lot about in California. We started with major fires in 2017 and haven't stopped since. So I'm going to be talking a bit more about that, and I hope that's helpful information for you. So one of the things I'd like you to think about is if your neighbor were to ask you what is climate change, how you would succinctly be, because you're a nurse, you're evidence-based, how would you describe climate change, what it is to your neighbor? And so I found it helpful to just start with the fact that, yes, indeed, the sun's been heating us for the millennia, and that has kept us in temperature homeostasis, climactic, sort of homeostasis for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And the reason for that is the sun is radiating down, heating our waters, heating our land, but then some of that heat gets radiated back out beyond our atmosphere. So that combination of getting heated and being able to cool off has created a wonderful way for us all to flourish. But what we have now with these things called greenhouse gases, which you know about, and they're not just carbon dioxide, they're also anesthetic gases, they're methane, they're a wide variety of chemicals. They are getting trapped. It is almost like a blanket because we're putting them out in such large quantities, and because of gravitational pull, they're kind of staying around the Earth. And they in turn are keeping the heat in, because while we're still getting the heat radiating down on the Earth, we're not able to exhaust that heat beyond our atmosphere. It's getting trapped. And so indeed, it's very similar to what happens with a car when you leave it outside in the sunshine in the summer. It may be 80 degrees outside, but within 10 minutes, if you're in direct sunlight, it can go as high as 99 degrees. And that's because the sun is radiating in and there's no way for that heat to be released. So what we've been calling this is the greenhouse effect. Once again, we have this blanket or this greenhouse of greenhouse gases that have been effectively blanking the Earth. And that's causing global warming, but we are now calling it climate change because that's the overarching thing that is happening that is causing us, wreaking havoc essentially all over the earth right now. You all know that there are a wide range of places that greenhouse gases are coming from. Energy is inevitably the largest, but there are other sources, and these percentages may change from country to country. And this is a very old slide in terms of the numbers. The numbers can change pretty widely. We have changed the nomenclature from global warming to climate change. And both of those terms, at least in my country, have been politicized. And so policies are around these issues are quite politicized. But another way that I describe things when I'm talking to my neighbors about climate change is how important temperatures are to human beings and to pretty much all life on Earth. And that as nurses, we know from evidence that when we take a person's temperature, we want it to be around 98.6. As soon as it gets just a little bit higher at 100.4, you start to feel crappy. If you get up to 104, now you start to have organ system failure. Now things are going south on you. And so what we have essentially is that the whole Earth is heating up right now. And so what happens if the whole Earth has a fever? And so what we also know is that in addition to humans, all life on Earth needs sunlight, practically all life on Earth, sunlight, water, some kind of food or sustenance, and air, unless they're anaerobic. And they also then need a temperature range in which they're going to flourish. And while some of our smallest organisms that reproduce very quickly and therefore can be adaptive over time because they can genetically modify over time, the larger species, including the bottom right, which is a redwood tree, which lives for 1,000 years, is not going to be able to be as adaptive and therefore is going to be the most seriously perturbed by these extreme heat events and other kinds of events that are going to take place because of climate change. So this is a slide that I created almost 25 years ago about climate change. At the time, I was calling it a public health emergency, calling it a planetary destabilizer. We talked because scientists already knew we were going to see sea level rise. We were going to start seeing more extreme storm activities. We were going to start to see changes in agriculture, food insecurity around the globe, more droughts, more fires, more increased heat waves, decreased access to water, increased morbidity and mortality secondary to a wide range of things, species extinction, and then start to see climate refugees. All of this is currently happening. We are now in it. We are in the belly of the beast. And so what I said I was going to talk about is some of the things specifically about fire and then smoke. And these are the lessons that we've learned in Northern California from a whole set of pretty devastating fires. And the photo that you see on the right there, you see again on the top right. I mean, you saw it on the left, now you see it on the top right. This was just about 3 or 4 miles from my house when one of the first fires, big fires that we had in California was going on. And that was the Kaiser Hospital in the middle of the night, having to evacuate 2 hospitals in the city that's closest to where I live, had to evacuate completely. And that means ICU patients, that means everybody had to get out because the fire was actually licking up the walls. And days after the fire, you could see the fire damage going up the side of the wall. The bottom picture is Coffey Park, another 3 miles from my house, completely destroyed. And it doesn't look unlike the Hawaiian pictures that we've been seeing. So we know fire is also something that is extraordinarily devastating to communities. So what did we learn? We learned that every single one of us, all of you, need to have a go bag. And you need to have a go bag because there may be a fire, there may be a flood, there may be an earthquake. We're more likely at where I am to have an earthquake. There may be some other kind of critical event, maybe man-induced critical event, explosions, airplane crashes, heaven only knows what. So each person in your family needs to have their go bag. Each pet needs to have a designated, however small or big, go bag also. There is not one size that fits all, but there are some very helpful lists, and I'm going to give you a bunch of resources, and I'm going to give you my slides so that you'll have all the URLs and all the resources. You also need to make sure that you've got batteries and an ability to recharge your cell phones, and a radio that does not depend on your cell phone, at least one per family unit. There are also some very important documents that you need to have in a safe place and bring with you in case of some kind of devastation. And you need to help your patients and communities know about this. We learned this from the fires. We learned how important it is to have these documents, because after the fire burns a house completely down to the nothing, and then the insurance companies and the other folks and the state agencies and the federal agencies want information from you, it's going to be really helpful for you to have these documents. So once again, I'm not going to go through this. I'm going to just let you know, you're going to have a list of this. It's really important that we help our community members know about these resources. The other things that we discovered after the fact here is that it's really hard to remember what you have in your house. And so what you can do now, and what your community members can do now, is you can you can go around your homes and video everything that you have. Pull open your closets, video what you have there. Pull out your drawers, video what you have there. One of our friends who lost their house and everything in it had to make a list for the insurance companies in order to get things paid for. And they came to dinner and she was looking at my mixer and she was like, oh, I didn't put in my kitchen. And she said, I didn't put my mixer on the list, and it was a really expensive one. And so she had to go back to put that on the list for insurance agency. So having these videos, having still pictures work just as well. Really important. This is a link on how to create your home inventory. So you will have this information, and the Insurance Information Institute created this, and it can be incredibly helpful for you. The next thing that everybody should have, and we do have house fires sometimes, not just part of these, grand wildfires, but sometimes communities have house fires, and sometimes 2 or 3 houses burn down. And so everybody in your family should know how to do an emergency exit from your home. If there's a 2nd or 3rd floor, there should be a portable ladder somewhere there that could be put out by a window so people can come down if the stairways are blocked. You also need to know where are the emergency routes from your neighborhood and where are the alternative routes. So I live in a rural area, and there is only one route in either direction from my house. And but there are vineyards and farms above my house and some farm roads, so that if we had to get out by walking, we would have to go up and over the hill using the farm roads. So everybody should know that. Also establish gathering places. Where is the, many of the people in your family may be at work when an event like this happens. So establish separate gathering places, and have a plan. If anybody in your community have large animals, have a plan for what's going to happen to them. When we had the big fires here, The areas that were over by the ocean, the coastal areas were not on fire, but all of the ranchers there brought their cattle trailers to the areas where the fires were, at the fronts of the fires, and they were helping the ranchers there to get their cattle into the trailers. And we used our state fairgrounds that were well away from the fires. And in some instances, with some subsequent fires, they took all the large animals down to the beaches, and they had them down at the beaches. So have a plan and have a community plan for them. And understand that your cell phones may be out. And once again, this is a resource I want you to have. So readyforwildfires.org. If you go there, you will find these titles: A Parent's Guide to Fire Safety for Babies and Toddlers, Planning Together for Emergencies, ready.gov for kids, and Smoky Kids. So these are resources that I just really wanted to share with you. And so the other thing that really needs, that you need to know is where alerts are going to happen from, and get on alert systems and get your patients on an alert system, and especially those who are most vulnerable. Get seniors on alert systems so they know early on if they may need to be evacuated, so they can get in touch with other family members or invoke whatever contingencies they have plans for. And then also, in addition to your go bag, figure out what your first grabs are. In my instance, because I've been evacuated twice, I have grown children now, but I have some of their art that for me is still precious and on my walls. It's my kids' art. That's the thing that I couldn't reproduce. So those are the things that I would take. Have some form of a first aid kit in your car. Cars, we as nurses should have that anyway. Back up everything on your computer to the cloud. Back up all your photographs to the cloud. If you are a cook like my husband is, back up. He has a drawer full of recipes. Back those up to the cloud so you will not lose your grandmother's, wonderful winter cake recipe. And then also figure out who are the neighborhood groups and get yourself and your patients and community members involved in those. The Cool Block is an amazing program. You can go onto this resource, and it's a program that helps you organize your block. This is particularly helpful in urban areas. The woman who's all the way to the left is Lisa Hartmeyer. She's a nurse practitioner. She does renal transplant work, and she spearheaded the Cool Block in her urban city block where she didn't know her neighbors. This gave them an opportunity to get together, to know each other, to know who spoke what languages on her block, to know who had mobility issues, who had any other kinds of vulnerabilities. And now they know each other. They say hello to each other. They know what resources each other have. And they've really built resiliency into their neighborhoods. You in Canada may have a different version of Cool Block. A good thing to ask your emergency response communities to see what kinds of things they have for you. If you're living in the sort of urban-rural interface, this is an area where it's particularly important to create defensible space around your house. And there are instructions for how to do that. We've learned better and better how to do that. You're still living vulnerably in a forest if you're living at that interface, but this is how you can best protect your houses. And a couple of other resources for you on how to what's called harden your home. So to make it a little bit more resistant to catching on fire. The fire resistant landscaping, I talked to a fire chief. He wasn't sold on that. He wasn't sure that there were plants, if you've got a really hot fire coming through, that were going to actually resist fires. The other thing in communities, when possible, especially those that are on that urban rural interface, is getting power lines underground. Big infrastructure activity, but a policy issue. Know who and what the resources are in your community. So I just went to a disaster meeting this past Monday, and I discovered there's a nonprofit organization, and what they do is they help to identify people who have medical equipment that relies on electricity, and they get batteries to them, not just batteries for 2 and 3 hours. They get batteries that will last a couple of weeks for their medical equipment. And this is a little nonprofit organization in my community that does this. So learning not just about the Red Cross in your area, Salvation Army, whatever you have. I gave a talk in Martha's Vineyard, and that's why I have the Martha's Vineyard one. But find out who these various organizations are and how you as a nurse can interface with them and learn about them so that you can share them as a resource with your patients and communities, with your faith-based organizations and others. When I teach disaster preparedness for students, I assign them avatars. So they have to be one of these populations over the course of the semester, and think, as they're learning everything about disasters, think what it would be like if you were a person that had one of these attributes. And I would suggest as an exercise for yourself as a committee, that this is a great group exercise for you to do. What are the resources? How would you prepare a person who is hearing or visually impaired? What should we as nurses know about the homeless population in our area? All of these kinds of things. And you can go to the Ready for Wildlife, and then you'll see another resource here. But this list of vulnerable populations is mine. Practice drills. One of the reasons they were so successful, thank God, at getting the patients out of that one hospital in my near neighborhood was they had recently done a practice. And not everybody was involved, but enough key leaders were involved that they were able to be a lot more effective because they had most recently done that. And so all manner of practice drills in your neighborhood. The other thing to note is that if there's an evacuation that is being required in your area, it is really important not to wait till the last minute hoping it'll be lifted, but to get the heck out of there and to encourage your community members to do the same, because traffic happens. And in my little community, which I already told you has just 2 directions for egress, people were lining up at the gas station of all things, and it completely bollocksed up traffic in our little one-horse town. So we learned that we need to have a traffic person just pushing people past that gas station if they had a half a tank or more. And so recognizing that traffic patterns are going to potentially change also because of what's going on, whether it's a flood or a fire, et cetera. And paying attention to the news all the time. Really listening and finding out what road closures there are, where the fire or flood is now. You know, if you have a dam going down, that's a very quick flood situation. And so finding out how the conditions are changing there. And also doubling up in cars, obviously, that's going to help the traffic situation. There's also different different evacuation language used in different areas. So find out what the language is for evacuations. Is there something called voluntary evacuations followed by mandatory evacuations? I don't know what they call it in your area. That's what they called it in ours. In one of the communities that I went to give this talk with, they called it precautionary and then immediate threat. So that's something for y'all to figure out. Make sure that you, as a nurse in your community, are getting alerts and what those special warnings mean. And if you live in a community where more than one language is spoken, encourage that all alerts can be queued in the language of the person receiving them. These days, smartphones are a blessing in terms of receiving alerts. The other thing we learned here is that the radio stations and the Spanish-speaking radio stations were incredibly important to the community members. But note that there may be issues with reception, both for radios, for cell phones, et cetera. And this is a redundancy, but listen for emergency updates. Shelters, what we discovered is that initially shelters self-organize. Churches open their doors, high schools start opening their doors and bringing people into gymnasiums. These people started self-organizing encampments out by the beach, because I live in a coastal community that is forest almost up to the ocean. And so initially they will self-organize, and then we as nurses who are public health nurses or work for hospitals or are part of a medical reserve corps or part of the American Red Cross or the Red Crescent, maybe in Canada, or maybe it's the Canadian Red Cross, you will start plugging in and then start formally creating the shelters and or going to the self-organized shelters and start staffing them. So the shelters are going to be, and setting a shelter up, important skill for you to know as a nurse. If you're a retired nurse, get into one of the systems, whether it's the Red Cross or the Medical Reserve Corps, something of this sort, so that you're in a system, that you've been trained, that you can be deployed strategically, and so that you're not just watching a disaster go on and say, oh gosh, I want to help. It's no good if that's when you're finally trying to get in. You need to be in the system ahead of time. The other thing to note is that people, we know this all too well, are not uniformly well. We have people who have the flu at any given time. We have people with asthma. We've been to people with mental health issues, sometimes in mental health crisis because of an evacuation order. We have people with mobility issues. We have pregnant women who are due next week. We have women who just delivered last week. So, and we have the frail elderly. I mean, you can name the populations. As nurses, we can have a role in this, and this is our climate change work. This is climate change work in practice. It's really how we are going to adapt to the climate change emergencies that we're in. The other thing, this is just a simple thing, when shelters are being set up, people want to donate. Well, from the very first fire that we had here, we had semis full of children's clothes, of toys, of puzzles, of you name it, things that people gave. Wait and hear what people need. For the most part, money. But what else they may need are things like bedding. Maybe they don't have enough bedding for a shelter. What we got calls for were animal cages, so that at the human shelters, they could also set up animal cages for people's pets. So also listen to the radios, hear what they're saying that they need. Now to get on to, I think I'm moving on to smoke, maybe not yet, but one of the things that we know, and you know all too well, is that with fires comes smoke. And the N95 respirators do work pretty well with smoke. And so when you've got a bad air day because of smoke, you need to be using them. What we discovered is that, except for this was pre-pandemic, after the pandemic, we now have children's size respirators. We did not have them at the time, and that was a problem. So some of the other things that we've learned about is now there may be intentional precautionary power outages in order to keep the lines from potentially blowing over or have trees blown over on them. Now we are more early or earlier, we're doing mandatory evacuations so as to prevent people from getting bollocksed up in traffic, et cetera. The other thing that they're doing now in that urban-rural interface is being more targeted with flame retardants. So what they're doing now, at least, and I believe it's probably the same in Canada, is they're dropping the flame retardants rather than just in the front of the fire to prevent it moving forward. They're first dropping it on the houses that are in the line of fire. So they're completely covering the area around the fire. The problem with that is these flame retardants contain toxic chemicals, and that is a whole other talk. The aftermath of returning to the fire scene, of requiring hazmat cleanup in some cases, in figuring out whether recovery is possible, identifying long-term housing. If you can't go back to your community, getting kids back to school in a new community and a new school, dealing with health insurance or housing and house insurance, fire insurance, and how there are definite social justice issues associated with who gets help and recovery help. That was certainly and has been true here in the United States. I'm not sure if it would be. You're a more equitable country than we are. And then for many communities, what it means to live in that new reality. A lot of community members wanted to jump right back into their homes and figure out where their jewelry, their special things, their whatever was. It's often not safe. And so really helping people to understand, to wait until some initial cleanup has been done. Very hard to keep people out at that point. We also know that one of the most vulnerable populations that we had during and after the fires were the firefighters themselves. They had never seen fires like this. They had never been so unsuccessful at saving lives, at saving homes, at saving communities. And they were working 24/7. So this population was much appreciated by our whole community, but also suffered PTSD and a number of mental health issues. The decision whether to rebuild or locate, an important decision. There are houses that were, or there's properties that were part of the 2017 fires here that are still under construction. And this, here's what I learned when a house burned down. This link is going to take you to an amazing one person's learning about what happened. And it's really quite touching. And I have the text at the very end of the slide. So this slide presentation. So when you take the slides, you can read that. But we do know from our experiences in our neighborhoods around where I live that returning to destruction, it puts a whole community into a mental health crisis, and obviously puts the individuals into that crisis too. And it puts them into financial crisis. Their place of work may have been burned down. Their children's school may have been burned down. They may have lost pets. They may have lost loved ones. And all of this it creates an immediate sense of crisis, but that goes on for a long period of time. And one of the things that child psychologists tell us is that while children may seem immediately thereafter pretty resilient, 6 months to a year after, they may start acting out. They may start doing poorly in school. For them, they may be triggered by news of fires in other areas. These are normal mental health repercussions that happen when you've had a community devastated by fires. And so as nurses, we need to figure out what is our role with the kind of nursing that we do. Do we do hospital-based nurses? What is our hospital's responsibility? Are we public health nurses, school nurses, home health nurses? What is our responsibility before to keep our communities and our patients safe? What is our responsibility? What will we be called to do during this? How can we help our communities immediately after with shelter and their immediate needs, getting diapers, getting Tampax to women, getting things to communities in large enough quantities that they can use them, and then being there for the long period of recovery. So now I may have gone over already and I didn't even get to smoke. So I'm going to ask you what you'd like me to do.
I'm enjoying the presentation. Maybe another 5 minutes.
Okay, the other thing that I can do, Rob, because you may be the only one, is I can do this part another time for you. And that way we're not keeping you all up past 9 o'clock your time.
Put it to a vote. If you put your hands up if you want her to keep going. And then put your thumbs down if you want to do it another time. Thumbs up from Hilda. Thumbs up, hands up. One thumb down, do it another time. Victoria has a new baby. Olivia.
Nancy, I'd like to have it another time, but I really think that given the unusual events we've had this year with the smoke and the fires, that maybe, you know, the last little bit could actually address that, because this is something different and new for all of us to have had to cope with the smoke. Just my thought.
I think let's do. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Let's do. Could we do a rain check on this? Well,
Of course,
no pun
of
intended.
course.
That would be great.
No,
and
of course.
We
That
can
would
learn
be
more about
wonderful.
wildfire smoke. Well, we've all dealt with wildfire smoke now, but we want to learn more about how to deal with it and how to live with it.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm
That's
just,
okay.
I have
It
too much
happens.
to talk about.
There's a lot to talk about. It's a very interesting subject, and we could talk for days on all of these subjects. Hilda said you have a 400 some odd page book. There's a lot to talk about.
I was
No,
looking
no,
at
no,
it.
no, no, no. I promise I wouldn't talk that much, but I do think so that you as nurses can talk about smoke and human health. I do think it would be helpful, and I'm happy to. It's not, you know, I'll come to your next meeting and I'll do it then.
To be honest, I am going to take this to my boss, my nursing manager, and show her the emergency management that we had to put in place for our community patients. I have a little minion in the background.
You know, any way that you can use me that would be helpful for you individually and collectively, you just let me know.
Are there a few points of wildfire smoke you could cover maybe in 5 and 10 minutes? Because that is what so many people have asked about.
And I'm coughing now because we've got wildfire smoke from Oregon coming down here. But yeah, I'm happy to do a real quick.
Yeah, just a quick rundown on wildfire smoke, just so we have a heads up, and then we can wrap up.
Yeah, about 5-10 minutes, because this was everywhere. This is a question I was constantly asked about.
Okay.
Any advice?
Yeah, very quick, and then we'll do a part 2 another day.
Okay, going to go through it fast. So I'm going to. So one of the most important concepts is wildfire smoke is both gases and particulate matter, and the gases attached to the particulate matter. So it's like they get a free ride with the particles. And there are different size particles, and depending on the size, it will determine how deep into our lungs and or the ultrafine particles will actually cross the alveolar passage and wind up being absorbed systemically. So when we have fires, we have particles of all of these sizes, plus, as I described, gases. The other thing to think about is what's burning in a wildfire. Well, it may be a forest. If a house is burning, it may be plastics, metals, pesticides, solvents, everything in your house. And so that smoke does not go to heaven. That is smoke that contains the products of combustion. What else might be in a wildfire? If you've got a community that goes up in smoke, it might be, most recently, one of my colleagues is near a fire that's near a tire factory, which is why I put that picture there. Well, once that tire factory goes up, you can imagine that is going to present just a whole bunch of different kinds of toxic smoke. But think about if a salon or a Target or a Home Depot, I don't know if these are the names of the stores you have, but a paint store, if they go up in smoke, what does that mean? And so we know that when forests burn, dioxins and furans are created. They're not the only thing that are created, but they're one of the most carcinogenic families of chemicals known to man. And so think about then what also happens when you burn these other things. And the truth is, we do not have combustion science around that. When we're looking at burns, and I'm going quickly here, you've got to, fires rather, you've got to know how big the area was that burned, how intense it was, because that makes a difference in terms of what kind of smoke is created. The dispersion, obviously, and in creating dispersion models, who's living in those dispersion areas. Immediate symptoms, cough, trouble breathing, sore throat, runny nose, irritated sinus, sometimes just a sort of heaviness in your forehead, not just a headache as you know it, but people have all kinds of acute symptoms to this. And we need to make sure we're watching air quality and getting young kids from playing outdoors, getting the elderly indoors, getting good filters in their homes, in their schools, in their preschools. We know from the peer-reviewed literature that fires and smoke create inflammation and cell damage, and that they also specifically suppress immune function. We know that wildfire smoke is much more harmful to children under the age of 5 because of their both their developmental stages physiologically, as well as their what they do developmentally. We had been doing good in terms of particulate matter at 2.5 microns up until these fires started in 2017. And what we're seeing in our country and in Canada is now we are seeing some of the worst air pollution that we've ever had. We also know that infectious diseases plus fire smoke increases mortality. We've got good peer-reviewed science about COVID, smoke, and increased mortality. And it's a multiplier effect for a lot of lung diseases, but also for mental health. We need to be protecting ourselves. Once again, N95s can help you. This is house dust. Smoke becomes ash, becomes house dust. So making sure that you've got filters in your house with your whatever your system is for heat and or air conditioning, make sure you change them often. If you haven't checked yours recently, and if you're in an area where there's smoke, make sure you're checking and replacing them. And when there's active smoke, closing all your doors and windows and increasing the turnover of air, turnover in your house. The same should happen in schools, in hospitals, etc. And this is my last slide, which is that the cost, this is US. I don't know your figures and I didn't have time to look it up, but the truth is that these fires are just costing us immense amounts of money. And that's money that our governments and private sector are going to have to pay out to rebuild rather than build some of the things that we really need in addition to rebuilding. So that was the quick version.
And
I hope that was helpful.
that's the reason your governor is suing the oil companies.
Yes. And why children in Montana are suing their government.
Yeah.
Yeah. So happy to be in conversation with you. I'm going to send Hilda, she'll share my slides with everybody.
Fantastic.
So that you'll have all the URLs and the lists and all of those things.
Barbara, that was amazing. I'd like to thank you on behalf of ONEIG. That was amazing. And we'd love to have you come back to finish the presentation, or however many presentations you have in you, because I think there's a few in there.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah, that was amazing.
there's also just for folks to know, there's a whole other issue around climate anxiety and mental health. And if you Google 20,000 children survey climate anxiety, there's a very important study that was done a couple of years ago about how young people in 10 countries, including Canada and the US, how young people are experiencing climate anxiety. So
we actually had a psychiatrist and a nurse academic talk about that in January.
perfect.
So yeah, that's amazing. I'd like to
That's right.
thank everybody for joining us, and Barbara, that was amazing. Right at the end of our ONEIG meetings, we like to do a little positive moment because, as you can see, there's a lot of negativity. I'm gonna do a quick positive story. It sounds like a negative story, but it's actually a positive story. There was all that floods in Libya a week or so ago, and I read this really interesting story that the first people to get involved there, they were the scouts. So I'm a Beaver Scout leader, but in Libya, their society is a mess. They don't have first the same way because their society is a mess, and they're that vulnerable population. But it was the group in the community. That's who was the first to respond. That's a little piece of humanity in the midst of it. If anybody else would like to share a quick little positive story, just a quick 30-second story, this is a good time to share it.
I would like to share one if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
Well, so I don't know whether you'll be able to see this. Probably need to put me on speaker, but it is called Taco Tuesday, and it is a community ride that's been going on for 3 years now in my community, where people ride their bikes. It came out of COVID. They get on their bikes, they pimp them up with lights and all kinds of things. It's all different ages. It's all different colors of people. And they are riding their bikes every Tuesday to build community, build resilience, not driving their cars. And it's went on 2 days. What day is today? I don't even remember. 2 days ago, which is when I took this photograph. And so I just wanted you to know that that's building resilience too. Oh, and at the end of the ride, we go to the taco trucks and eat tacos.
Even better.
That's why it's Taco Tuesday. I forgot about that part.
Don't tell Taco Bell.
Not Taco Bell.
Yeah, they might sue you.
The real Latino taco trucks.
That's amazing.
Anyway, take care, you all.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, everybody else, for showing up at 2. I learned a lot on this from Barbara speaking. I'm sure everyone else did as well, and it was great to gather with everybody and have a chance to talk about stuff and get together and, well, build a little bit of nursing community in this sphere. And yeah, thank you very much, and come to our next meeting. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Bye, guys. Thank you.